unregulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Welcome to another edition of Bearing Arms Cam and Company. My name is Cam Edwards. Yes, a special Friday edition today. And that is because on Thursday, and I just had a feeling when I woke up Thursday morning, I thought, boy, this is going to be a busy day. I was scheduled to speak with Congressman Clyde of Georgia about a new piece of legislation. We were supposed to talk at 10:30 Eastern Time, which is right when the Supreme Court released the decision in New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin. So we did do the interview, but obviously the Bruin decision took precedence on Thursday's Bearing Arms Cam and Company. So I want to share with you the conversation that we had, which again did take place moments after the Bruin decision was released. And I do mean like literally moments afterwards, because Representative Clyde has a new bill that just dropped called the Return Our Constitutional Rights Act. Now, return in this case is an acronym. It stands for Repealing Excise Tax on Unalienable Rights Now. So you have a pretty good idea of what this bill would do, right? Yeah, it would eliminate all of the federal taxes that currently apply to firearms. Big deal. Probably not going to get a warm reception from House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, I have to say. But if we do have a red wave election this November, we could actually see the prospects for the Return Our Constitutional Rights Act improve dramatically in the next session of Congress. So I want to share with you our conversation with Representative Clyde of Georgia, who is, by the way, a gun store owner himself, not just a member of Congress, but also a gun store owner. So he knows a thing or two about these excise taxes. And then stick around afterwards because we do have a special Friday edition of our recidivist report, our good deed of the day, and of course, our armed citizen story. We'll get to that after the conversation with Congressman Clyde. Take a look and a listen. Representative Clyde, thanks so much for joining me on the program today. As we were just sitting down to do the interview, the news came out that the Bruin decision was released and that New York's May issue carry laws declared unconstitutional, a violation of the 14th Amendment, according to Clarence Thomas. I've not had a chance to read the entire decision yet, but let me just get your initial thoughts on New York's May issue laws being thrown out by the Supreme Court.
Well, Cam, thank you for having me on. And I will tell you that sounds like a great win for the Second Amendment and for the people of New York. And honestly, I think that will probably reverberate across the country.
Absolutely. We'll learn the details here as soon as I have a chance to read the opinion. But I also want to talk about a bill that you have just introduced in Congress called the Return Our Constitutional Rights Act, Repealing Excise Tax on Unalienable Rights Now. That's the return acronym. And this would repeal basically all of the current excise taxes, including the Pittman-Robertson excise taxes on firearms, ammunition, and other outdoor equipment.
It would repeal every excise tax on firearms, on ammunition, and on bows and arrows because they're considered arms. Everything that is an arm that is covered under the Second Amendment of the Constitution, the excise tax on all of those would be repealed. Because if you can tax a constitutional right, is it really a constitutional right? If you can tax it a little bit, right now it's taxed at either 10 or 11%, depending upon what it is, whether it's handguns or long guns or ammunition. If you can tax it at that percentage, then what percentage can't you tax it at? Then you can tax it at any percentage, and you can tax it completely out of existence so that normal people cannot afford a constitutional right anymore. Well, how is that a constitutional right? I don't think it is. I think ever since the Heller decision came down that declared the Second Amendment to be an individual constitutional right, that taxing it is not legitimate. Taxing it is illegal. So the law has to be changed to conform with the Constitution. And that means eliminating excise tax on arms. That means firearms, ammunition, bows and arrows. But otherwise, if we allow it to stay, then we create a freeway wherein the Democrats can use taxation, they can weaponize taxation, and they can then eliminate their constitutional rights. And we've seen that. Just last week, the Democrats dropped a bill to increase taxation by 1,000% over what it is right now. So that means a $500 gun would cost $5,500. or a $1,000 AR would cost $11,000. Why? Because they want to eliminate that. Now, it would also eliminate the taxation on the National Firearms Act. So the $200 NFA tax would go away because that is an excise tax as well.
And you're right about the bill introduced by Don Beyer, which would jack up the excise taxes on AR-15s and other modern sporting rifles by 1,000%. And it strikes me, Representative, when I saw that, I thought, okay, so Don Beyer apparently is okay with the 1% being able to own firearms, right? If Elon Musk wants to go out and buy an AR-15, he's not going to be bothered by 1,000% excise tax. What this does is it places the right to own the most commonly sold rifle in America today outside of the means of the vast majority of Americans, right? It's not a gun ban. It's if you're rich, if you're wealthy, if you're powerful, if you're connected, oh yeah, sure, you can own AR-15s. But if you're living paycheck to paycheck, if you're trying to struggle to fill up your tank with gas at $5 a gallon right now, you're out of luck, right? We are going to price you out of exercising your right to keep and bear arms.
That's exactly correct. It disenfranchises all of us, all the working class Americans who and their families, who live paycheck to paycheck or just want to make a good living for their people, and they're not wealthy. That's the vast majority of Americans are exactly where they are, whether it's blue collar or white collar, it doesn't really matter. But Americans that just want to enjoy their liberties and defend their families and make sure that they're safe, it would price them completely out of existence. It would price those rights out of existence.
Well, Representative, listen, I got to say, I appreciate you introducing this bill. I know that Nancy Pelosi is probably not even going to give it a hearing, but you know what? The midterms are coming.
That's right.
And we've got a chance to get this bill through the House here, I think, in the months ahead. So thank you for joining me on the program today. And I look forward to continuing this conversation about the Return. It's not the Return Act, the Return Our Constitutional Rights Act here in the weeks and months ahead.
Well, thank you. And please tell folks far and wide across our great country that what this bill does.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Cam.
Congressman Andrew Clyde joined us here on Bearing Arms, Cam and Company. I appreciate the Congressman joining us on the program. Now, I also said on Thursday's show that we would be delving deeper into the Bruen decision. And we're going to be doing that at bearingarms.com. I would encourage you to check out the website throughout the weekend. I am going to be doing a deep dive. I went through Thursday night. Actually, finally had a chance to sit down and read the entire decision, the concurring opinions, the dissenting opinion. I was taking notes as I was going along. So I am going to do a couple of deep dives into the Bruen decision over the course of the weekend at bearingarms.com. And I encourage you to check it out. But also on Monday, here on Bearing Arms Cam and Company, we're going to be talking with Chuck Michel. He is the head of the California Rifle and Pistol Association, a well-respected Second Amendment attorney, and one of the attorneys of record in Duncan versus Bonta. That is the case challenging California's ban on magazines that can hold more than 10 rounds of ammunition. Now, that's been sitting in conference at the Supreme Court for several months now, along with a New Jersey magazine ban case, a Maryland challenge to Maryland's so-called ban on assault weapons. And there's one other case that is hanging out in conference. Oh, Young versus Hawaii, dealing with the may issue licensing requirements for open carry in Hawaii. And I anticipate that the court is going to take action on all of those cases on Monday. They're not going to agree to hear all four of those cases. They might agree to hear one or more of them, however, including that magazine ban that we just talked about. But they'll also likely remand some of these cases back down to the lower courts with instructions to follow the test that they laid out in Bruen, as opposed to the, two-step process that they've been using to see if Second Amendment rights are implicated, and then whether or not it's okay to do that because the government has a really good reason for it. Yeah. Again, I would not be shocked if the court does take another Second Amendment case. I would have to say as well, though, I wouldn't be shocked if they sent them all back down to the lower courts and said, here, rehear these cases based on what we just said in Bruen, so that we don't have to address this issue right away. Again, we'll see what happens, but Monday is going to be a busy day, and Chuck Michel from the California Rifle and Pistol Association will be our guest to talk about not only the Bruen decision in terms of the right to carry, but also, again, that text and history test laid out by Justice Clarence Thomas in his majority opinion, and what that means for all kinds of gun laws on the books around the country. California, of course, has probably the most gun control laws of any state. I think they've got over 100 state-level gun control measures. So we're going to talk with Chuck Michel about what laws he thinks are ripe for targeting that are, frankly, not already subject to lawsuits. Right now, though, let's turn our attention to today's Armed Citizen story, our good deed of the day, and our recidivist report. We'll start there, and it's not really a recidivist report, but given the fear-mongering on the part of anti-gun politicians like California Governor Gavin Newsom, I thought it would be appropriate to just remind folks what's happening right now. So California, right, it's a May issue state, can't get a carry license, particularly if you live in the really populated counties along the coast. Most of the populated counties, the really population-rich counties, are very much May issue. You get out into rural California, and even though the state law says you got to demonstrate good cause, a lot of county sheriffs say, hey, man, your right of self-defense, it's cause enough for me. And so you do have this sort of patchwork quilt policy, depending on what part of the state you're in, right? But again, technically, under California law, these are May issue systems, and Gavin Newsom says, "Oh my gosh, we got to keep that in place. It's shameful," he said, what the court has done. So here's what happens right now in California if you are caught not just carrying a firearm without a license, but in fact shooting it in a negligent manner. You don't go to prison. You get probation. 2 years probation for a 19-year-old who is now a felon because he pleaded guilty to discharging a firearm. Actually, I guess he pled guilty only to carrying a loaded firearm without a license. And in exchange, charges of discharging a firearm in a negligent manner and possessing an undetectable firearm were dismissed. Yeah. This is how California's gun control laws work in practice, as opposed to in theory, where Governor Gavin Newsom says, oh, they're stopping people from committing crimes. No, they're not. In fact, when people are breaking these laws, oftentimes, even if there's an underlying violent offense, shooting in a negligent manner, what happens? Slap on the wrist. Meanwhile, if you want to be a legal law-abiding citizen, you don't want to plead guilty to a felony, even if it results only in probation, you're hosed, right? Depending on where you live, it is impossible for you to get a license to carry to protect yourself from people like Eddie Amezquita, the 19-year-old who pleaded guilty in this case. Amezquita was arrested along with documented gang member Isaac Anthony Martinez back on June the 9th following an investigation stemming from an armed robbery, according to the Riverside County Sheriff's Department. Martinez was freed on $30,000 bail 2 days later. The Coachella Valley Violent Gang Task Force involved in arresting Martinez as part of a robbery investigation that included criminal threats and conspiracy. When they searched his residence, they allegedly seized a .38 caliber semi-automatic handgun as well as a .22 caliber revolver. The investigation then led police to another home in Indio, where law enforcement officials found a vehicle with multiple occupants and a loaded 9mm semi-automatic handgun without serial numbers, a so-called ghost gun. Yeah. Prior to their arrival, Amezquita allegedly fired a shot in front of a home at the location. Again, he was arrested, charged with multiple felonies, pleaded guilty very quickly, by the way. I mean, again, this was just earlier this month. So, yeah, he wanted to get rid of that charge, and so he did. Pleaded guilty again to a felony, 2 years probation, and that is how the gun control laws work in practice in California. Yeah. based on that, based on our Constitution, I'm glad to see that the average Californian will soon be able to carry a firearm in self-defense. But come on, Gavin, quit pretending that your gun control laws in California are making a difference in stopping violent crime. All they're doing, stopping law-abiding residents from exercising their Second Amendment rights. Today's armed citizen story from Connecticut, where two teenagers were fatally shot by an armed homeowner after targeting the man in a home invasion. This was East Hartford, Connecticut, and police identified the intruders as 16-year-old Isaiah Jose Lopez and 15-year-old Isaiah Miguel Navarez, both of Connecticut. Lopez from Hartford, Navarez from the town of Meridian, Connecticut. As I said, police believe that this was a targeted attack, that the teens chose this particular home for a reason, although the homeowner apparently was unaware of who these teenagers were. According to the Hartford Courant, the two allegedly entered the home, physically attacked the resident, who did legally possess a firearm, and he did use that handgun to shoot both of the teenagers attacking him. Police said the teens were rushed to nearby hospitals where they were pronounced dead. Authorities also say the teens went into the home, physically attacked the resident, who suffered minor injuries in the attack. The East Hartford Police Department's Mark Caruso says as of this time, the only weapon recovered on the scene was the homeowners. Again, describing this as a targeted home invasion. Caruso said it appears as though the homeowner had no knowledge of his attackers. We're looking into several possibilities. The detectives are tracking down leads at this time. They say we're treating this as a home invasion type incident where two males come into the home, and it appears to be a case of self-defense where the homeowner was a legal owner of the firearm. We will follow up this story with more information if any becomes available here in the coming days. And finally today, our good deed of the day, in the right place at the right time, willing and able to do the right thing, even though he was off duty. A member of the Grand Haven Department of Public Safety helping to save a swimmer at a state park earlier this week. This was a Tuesday evening. Kelvin Miller, off duty at the time, as I mentioned, but enjoying a relaxing evening with his kids. He says, I was at the playground with my 8 and 6-year-old. There were red flag warnings up along the shore of Lake Michigan, warning of dangerous conditions in the water. That made his daughter unhappy because she wanted to go swimming. He said, I explained to her, we don't want to go swimming on the red flag day, just, again, to avoid this type of situation. And then moments later, Miller's phone went off. And it was dispatch alerting him and other officers to a swimmer who was struggling in the water. Miller said, I looked at the text, saw that it was Area 4, which is actually right off the playground. So he grabbed some rescue gear and ran out into the waves. A man had swum out to rescue his 2 children who were on a raft. Bystanders were able to get the kids to shore, but their dad was now struggling in the heavy waves. And so Miller started swimming towards them. He said there were big waves. If you weren't planning for them to go way over your head. He said, so luckily with a life jacket, I was able to float over the waves, reach the man. He said, I walked him through what I was going to do. I told him not to pull me under the water. I had flotation. That the flotation was sufficient enough to hold him above the water as well. He said he was pretty exhausted. Grabbed onto him. Was able to pull him back to shore. Amazing. There were, by the way, while Miller is dragging this guy back to shore, there were other on-duty rescuers who were trying to help another man who had been caught in the riptide after trying to help his wife back to shore. Thankfully, everybody made it back okay. In fact, while the crews were treating the man that Miller had pulled from the water, another third rescue call went out, and a woman from the Lansing area had to be pulled from the water. Again, everybody's okay. Nobody harmed. But Miller said, when you think about it, it takes a couple of minutes to get on the scene, a couple of minutes to get gear on. So being here right away definitely helped with that process. As I said, in the right place at the right time, willing and able to do the right thing. Officer Kelvin Miller of the Grand Haven, Michigan Public Safety Department. We appreciate your very good deed. And yeah, those, listen, I'm not a fan of red flag laws, but I do tend to obey the red flags when they're at the beach. Because those riptides, serious stuff. So, again, glad that he was able to assist and that nobody was hurt. That is going to do it for this edition of Bearing Arms Cam and Company. I'm so glad that you were able to join us for this special Friday edition. And look forward to talking to you again on Monday with our guest, Chuck Michelle of the California Rifle and Pistol Association, as we continue our conversation on the post-Bruin landscape, what's coming down the road from the anti-gun politicians, and what laws are next on the chopping block because they violate our right to keep and bear arms. We'll get to that on Monday. Have a great weekend until then. But be sure to check out BearingArms.com throughout the weekend. We'll be updating the site with plenty of the Second Amendment news and information that you need to know about. If you like what you see, you can always become a VIP subscriber as well. Just use the promo code GUNRIGHTS and you can get a significant savings on your VIP membership. Your support does matter. It really does make a difference. We really appreciate it. So we're going to give you exclusive commentary and content as well. It's our way of saying thanks. Until then, be well, be safe, and be free.